Hey guys, it's Kaylor. Welcome to the YouTube channel. I've heard you guys. I've seen the comments. I've read the messages. You guys want tutorials from me. A lot of you have been asking for tutorials or breakdowns on my speed arts. So today we're going to try something new and I'm going to break down one of my videos and teach you how to create it from scratch. So I hope you guys like this. If you guys want to see more of these breakdowns / tutorial videos, leave a thumbs up. Let's get into today's video. We're going to be making a portfolio site for a UI designer / web designer. Alright, so the document size that I'm going to be working in is extremely large, so if you guys don't want to use the same dimensions I'm going to, you guys can put in 2880 by 1627, and you can also lower the resolution to 72 for the web if you want to do that. I'm designing in extremely large sizes so I can print this if I need to. That's why the resolution is so high. That is standard print resolution. So let's create our document. Okay, let's begin. So the first thing we need to do is make sure you go up here to View, and you have Snap checked, and you also have Smart Guides checked. That's going to be pretty important when we're lining things up and we're moving things around. So hit Command R or Control R, and this brings up your rulers. And I like to outline my entire canvas with rulers, so one on the left, one on the right, one on the top, and one on the bottom. Also, let's add one to the center. Since we have Snap on, you'll watch it snap when we get close. There it is. And then we're going to create a new layer. I'm going to make a rectangle, and let's make it like that. Looks good. And this is just going to be a spacer so we can align some more guides. So make sure you have the layer selected so the guides will snap to it. And I'm going to snap one to the left, and then we're doing the same thing over here. And snap it there. I'm just going to name the spacer and click the eye to hide it, just in case we need it later. So this is looking good. The next thing I need to do is create a new layer. Grab my rectangle tool one more time, and let's drag out a rectangle from corner to corner of our canvas. Since we have Snap on, it'll automatically make sure it sizes perfectly. I'm going to change the color of this to white. And the reason we made this is so now we can drag our image in and we can create a clipping mask with that. So I'm going to hold Shift and scale my image so that it's larger than our rectangle. That looks good. And I'm going to click the check mark. Next, you need to hold Alt and click in between the rectangle and our image. And that's going to create a clipping mask, and you can see the little arrow here shows that this is being clipped by this. So if I drag my rectangle around, you'll notice that everywhere outside of the rectangle the image does not show, and that's how the clipping mask works. So I'm going to put this back. Whoops, I'll put that back. Alright, there we go. Alright, so next thing we need to do is lower the opacity or the fill. In this case, we're going to do the fill on our image to about there. That looks pretty good. And let's begin creating our logo here and our navigation over here. So for the navigation, I'm just going to have a home, work, about, contact for our portfolio site. Something I like to do is add 7 spaces in between each word. So I'm going to go ahead and add 6 more since there's already a space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that looks good. So now let's change this to a different color. I'm going to use this dark blue I have. The color code on this is 2C, 2C, 3A. Let's scale our text down a bit. So I have the character menu over here on my sidebar. If you don't have this, go to Windows and select character. I'm using Proxima Nova font. I believe this is from Typekit, but you can Google it and figure out how to get it. Then let's change this to 18. I'm also going to change this to these double T's here, which is going to make everything capital like that. That looks good. And let's align this to our guideline here. Let's actually go to 18. It's a little too far on the, or lower than 18. Let's go 16. Yeah, there we go. It's too far over here to the middle, so. And that looks good. So since we're on the home page, we need some kind of indicator to that, and I'm going to use a circle for that. So I'm just going to click and hold on this, and it'll give us this little drop menu, and click the ellipse tool. Holding Shift, I'm going to drag a small circle out. That looks good. And let's align this up to our text. You can also use the arrow keys to move it around a little bit more precisely. That looks good. And let's use our highlight color, which is going to be this color here, F5DE42. And that looks good. Next, let's make our logo. So I'm just going to grab my text tool again and click over here and type in logo. You can place your image there of your logo, whatever you want. This is just a filler for me. Go back to our character menu and let's make this 24. Everything's all capped and bold, looking good. and click the check mark when done. Now we need to align this to our other guideline over here and align it center to that. And this is where Smart Guides really comes into play. You'll see these lines. That's Smart Guides taking over, saying that everything's good. Alright, so that's looking good. So now let's add our text in the center. That's going to be our main tagline or phrase or whatever you want there. In this case, since it's a portfolio website, I'm going to put UI designer and web designer here. So T for my text tool again, UI designer and web designer. Make sure I spelled all that right. Yeah, I think so. Everything's caps. It's throwing me off. Let's turn that off. So just click the double T's again. Yeah, that's good. And let's change this font to 48. Okay. And click the check mark. Now I'm going to align this as center as it can be visually. If I hit Command T for the transform tool, you'll see here's the centermost point. If we line that up, and let me turn this off by clicking the check, it doesn't look so good. So I'm just going to drag it a little bit over in like that. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is create our buttons. I'm going to have an About Me button and a Hire Me button. So this is going to be our first call to action on the website, getting the user to actually do something. So I'm going to grab a rectangle tool with our yellow selected. I'm just going to drag out a decent sized rectangle. That looks good. Change it to yellow. I'm going to hold Alt and drag this over. Give it a little bit of space there, and then go over here on the layers panel. I'm going to select the first rectangle, hold shift, and select the next one. And then I'm going to drag these so they align centered. Let's drag them down a bit. There we go. With the text tool, make sure you do not click on the shape. Since we have the shape selected, you'll see it's a circle. That means it's going to use the text tool on that path. So make sure you have this. See how the square comes back? So just click over here and let's put About Me. I'm gonna hit Command A and then highlight everything. Let's lower this down to, let's try 18. Let's see, 20. That looks a lot better. Click the check. Then I'm gonna go over here and let's change this from bold to semi-bold and see how that looks. Yeah, that's a lot better. Let's drag this into our first button. If I can get it centered, there we go. Then I'm gonna hold Alt and click and drag this over. Center it up. And then let's change this to Hire Me. We'll have to realign. That looks good. Now I'm going to go over here to my panels again, click on About Me, hold shift, click Hire Me, and let's change them to white. I'm using the libraries panel. This is a really useful tool. I might make another video on this. It saves a lot of time. The only other way to change the color on a text would have to be using the text tool and hitting Command A and then going up here and changing it. With the library, you can just simply click on the layer and change the color. It's really easy and it saves a lot of time. Alright, so the last two things we need to do to this is I'm going to have some X and O's here in the background just as like a little highlight, and then I have a down arrow telling the user to scroll down. Ideally, this is going to fill the entire user's browser so they won't see any of the content down below. So I have a Font Awesome plugin. If you guys want to get this, I have a video showing you how to get this. All it does is provide you with tons of icons that you can use in your web designs. So I'm going to type in down, and let's grab this FA angle down here, click on it, and I'm going to hit Command T because it's really small, and scale it up. That's a bit large, but that's okay. At least we can see it. And I'm going to put it about where it needs to be. That looks good. Command T, hold Shift and Alt, and that looks good. I'm also going to change this to our dark blue color. Okay, so lastly, let's just add our X's and O's. So I'm going to load up the Font Awesome plugin again. And the X is actually a close icon, so I'm going to put that in there. And then the circle is just some kind of circle icon. There's two to choose from. There's a thin one and there's a thick one. There's a normal one. I'm going to choose the normal one. Now I'm going to select the close icon and hold Shift and select the circle. Command T, Shift and Alt, and scale them up. Let's not go too big. That looks good. While they're both selected, I'm going to go ahead and change them to yellow. And let's begin dragging them just randomly around our document. I'm actually going to grab both of them again and scale them down. They're a bit large. That looks better. And I'll just move them back. Okay, it needs to be kind of random for this to work. You don't want it too aligned or else the user will tell and it'll look off. So I'm going to put some behind the text. Right now it's overlapping, but that's okay. We'll fix that. Let's put some over here, and let's do maybe 2 or 3 more. So all I'm doing is just grabbing both layers by holding shift like we've done before, and I'm just moving them around. Okay, let's put an X there, and lastly we'll put a circle down here. Maybe over here a little bit. That's good. And I'm going to grab the X and I'm going to duplicate that one more time for a little bit of symmetry, not too much. I'm going to put an X kind of over here. Okay, so now I'm going to grab the topmost layer by clicking on it, and then holding shift, grab the first one. Then I'm going to group them, double click on the group name, and type XO. So we know what this is. I'm going to drop the opacity down to 50, and then we're going to drag this below our UI designer and web designer text so that nothing overlaps, and that looks good. So I think that is our banner done, and that's got our navigation in there, our banner image, and everything we need the user to click on, our call to action. That looks good. So now let's move on to the rest of the website. Okay guys, before we move on, let's clean things up. Our layers are looking a bit disgusting, and I'm going to be a hypocrite and say don't do what I did, and don't leave your rectangles unnamed. Name them what they are. So for this rectangle here, I'm clicking the I button so I can see which one it is, and hire me obviously goes with that. You can click on that and then group them, and you can name this hire button. And you can do that for all of this and make this really nice and clean. But for the tutorial, I didn't do this just because I wanted to save you guys a little time. So I'm just going to group everything together and name this header and banner, so that we can have a little bit of cleaner layers over here when we're working with the rest of the website. So to expand our document down below, we need to hit C for our crop tool, and I'm just going to click and drag this out to about there and click the check mark. Now since we have our background layer locked, this is filled black because that is default. So I'm going to double click on my background layer. I'm going to name it BG. I'm going to hit G on the keyboard for my fill tool, and you can hit D to return your swatches to normal colors, and then hit X to flip them. So now white is selected, and I'm just going to fill that. Then you can go ahead and lock this layer. So now the BG is good to go, and we can move on. I'm going to skip over the project section, and we're going to go directly into the footer because we're going to be applying the same thing we did up here with the clipping mask. So I'm going to drag one guide all the way down to the bottom of the page, and I'm going to create a rectangle off of that that's about that sized. This is the properties panel. If you guys don't have this, go to Windows and select properties. I have all of my most used windows over here on the sidebar so I can easily access them. And let's change this to a lighter gray, maybe a little bit darker. That looks good. We can drag our last image, which is desk_3, into our document and line it up where we want it. Something I forgot to mention is when I'm scaling, I keep mentioning Shift and Alt. What that does is if I don't hold either, you can see the aspect ratio gets all messy. If I hold Shift, it keeps the aspect ratio the same. If I hold Alt, it scales from the center. So holding Shift and Alt does this, and it's really useful. Once you're done with that, click check. We're going to hold Alt and click in between our rectangle and our image and make a clipping mask like we did before. I'm just going to drag this to a nice position. Looks good. And lower the opacity down to 30. Since the rectangle below this image is gray instead of white like this one, you can see it's a little bit darker, and that's what we want because we want them to click on the button that we're about to put here. So on the footer, let's type in some text. I'm going to put let's work, I hope I'm spelling this right, I can't see, together. Let's change this to our dark blue. I think I got everything. Yeah, it looks good. And I'm going to center this up. Go to paragraph. Paragraph, same thing. Go to Windows and click on paragraph. Center that. Okay, looks good. Let's make this a bit larger. So let's try 24. 30. Much better. And since we're going to have something below this, I'm going to bold this. Okay, there we go. That's looking really nice. Now I'm going to hold Alt and drag this down. I'm going to change it back to semi-bold and lower it to 14. No, that's way too small. 18. That looks great. I'm going to change the text that we have in this to "We can build great things," period. And something a lot of designers do, and I do this all the time, is when you have a tagline below, like a heading right below it like this, if you change the fill to 90, it's a really subtle change, but it looks really nice. It also works with white really great on images, and you can just tell the difference in color ever so slightly, and it looks really good. Lastly, let's add a circle. So I'm going to click and hold, grab an ellipse, hold shift, and let's make it about that big. We're going to change it to our yellow highlight color that we used before, and I'm going to center this up. Alright, so now let's put some text in here, and make sure you don't click inside because you see we have the circle thing. We don't want that. I'm going to put "get in touch." Okay, since we have this large spacing here, I'm going to go to my characters panel, and this AA over top of each other, if you scale this down, that fixes that. So let's put a decent, or you can go to auto and it'll adjust it for you. So let's just leave it on auto. That's looking pretty good. And let's change this to 24. Let's change it now to white and drag it into our circle. I'm going to turn off my guides. That looks pretty good. I'm going to try to lower this image fill just a bit more. Let's try 25. Yeah, okay, the text is popping a lot more with that. Okay, so that's our footer done. If you want below this, you can put some copyright information, but for the tutorial, this is going to be a solid footer for us. Last thing we have to do is probably the simplest thing, which is our project section. This is going to get the user to go to view all of our work. And this is just going to be a simple rectangle, but before we do that, let's group all this again and name this footer. I'm going to create a new layer, and this is where I'm going to make my rectangle. Let's make a good rectangle about like this. And I'm going to change the color of this to the dark blue. Let's put it like that. Now, since we already have our buttons over here, since we want the buttons to be consistent throughout the website, excluding this special Get in Touch button, I'm going to drag a copy of this down to here. So I'm kind of glad that I made this higher button folder. So now I can just duplicate the folder by dragging it to a new layer. I'm going to drag it above the header and banner grouping. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to drag it down here. So now we can drag this Hire Me button, and I'm going to do about there. And let's change that to My Work. I'm going to make sure my work is centered, so I'm going to press V for the selection tool. I'm going to move it to where it lines up. That looks pretty good. Just to make sure, I'm going to hit Command or hold Shift and click on this layer, so these are both selected. I'm going to do our align vertical and our horizontal. There we go. Now everything is perfectly aligned. Alright, and the last bit of text we need to add to the site is telling you what this section is. So I'm going to put 400 plus projects and check mark. I believe I have a light gray in here. That's a bit too light. So I'm going to select our color picker and let's go to D0, D0, D0. Let's see if that works. That looks good. Now I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to highlight the 400 plus and let's change that to 36. It's a bit too big. Let's go to 30. Okay, and then projects, we're going to change that to 24 so that there's not so big of a difference in between. All right, and one more thing, the 400 plus, let's change that to a bold. So the project's a semi-bold, this is bold, and we're just going to line this up with this rectangle. I'm going to move my down arrow key to drag it down a bit. That looks great. And now we're going to add one of our sample projects images right here. So I've dragged in one of my web designs that I've done. This is my 404 page not found speed art with Yosemite. I'm going to center this up to our bluish black rectangle. I'm going to drag it just above it, and we're going to do our clipping mask, so hold Alt and click in between them. Like that. And then I'm going to lower the fill on this just a little bit. Let's try 50. Maybe a little bit more. 40. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's clean some things up. I noticed that our 400 plus projects is in the wrong folder, so I'm going to drag that out of there and close this. Okay, everything's good. And lastly, just click on the bottom layer, which is our rectangle, and hold shift and click 400 plus projects, group those together, and I'm just going to name this body since there's no more sections for the website. And that is our web design, guys. Hey guys, it's Kaler. Thanks for watching the video. Click here to subscribe to my channel for new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. If you want to see this channel grow even more, don't forget to share this video. You can click the share button down below. Over here is YouTube's recommendation just for you, so go check out that video and let me know what you think in the comments. Up here is my newest video, and if you haven't seen it already, go give it a thumbs up. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.